Welcome to the headquarters, powered by Edge. Join us each month as we explore the innovative minds, passionate entrepreneurs, and dynamic businesses that are shaping the future of Memphis and Shelby County. From groundbreaking initiatives to success stories that inspire, the Headquarters podcast is your destination for all things economic development in the Bluff City. Welcome to the Headquarters, an economic development podcast powered by Edge. I'm Dr. Joanne Massey, Vice President of Operations with Edge. And today I have with me Dr. Dell, Chief Innovation Officer with the International Economic Development Council. Welcome, Dr. Gines.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here with us here from Memphis, and you are coming from?
Nebraska, Omaha, Nebraska.
Omaha, Nebraska. Well, we're so happy that you're here with us, and just to kind of kick off, tell us about yourself and about the International Economic Development Council.
Sure. Well, IEDC, as it's known, for short, is the largest membership body for economic development organizations in the world. So we're headquartered in DC. I work remotely, hence why I'm in Omaha. And we have about 4,500 members, and we are basically the voice for the economic development profession. So my job specifically is I, pretty much manage our conferences, our research, our professional development, which leads to our CECD Economic Development Certification, and all of our programs, including a unprecedented $30 million Economic Recovery Corps program where we place 65 fellows into 65 communities across the nation. And these are middle to senior level economic development professionals to help these communities really create a strategy for economic growth.
Well, that's really amazing. And such a large organization, I can imagine that your mission is very comprehensive. Tell us about the values and mission of IEDC and what you guys actually are focusing on right now.
Right, and just to kind of summarize it, we just ratified the strategic plan with the board back in September of 2023. Our new president, Nathan Oley, really brought a whole new vision and energy to the economic development field in general, but also in IEDC. He comes from Rural Community Action Partnership, spent some time at EDA. So coming into the organization, he took a much more expansive view of the field. Then we got Ernst & Young to do the strategic plan, which really had 900 touch points from both members and not members to really kind of say this is where IEDC needs to be to help shape the field of economic development and support us. Mm-hmm. So really what came out of that strategic plan was kind of the way the field of economic development is perceived by economic developers as to where it should go. And so, some of the priority things that came out of it were, in the vision statement, one of the critical things was inclusive prosperity across the world, which is unique in economic development, which historically has been growth at all costs, no matter who it goes to. So now we're talking about inclusivity within that prosperity. Then you get in the mission, and along with things like collaboration and other things, we talk about, equitable and sustainable development. And so embedding into the field kind of these principles that high quality economic development should be accessible to everybody is now centered to IEDC, which means that the field said, these are the things that we should be doing. And that's kind of a new thing when you look at the historical field of economic development.
Well, here in Memphis, we are 62% African American, and I believe we're somewhere lingering around 62-65% African American population. So equity, inclusion is something we focus on every day in our work around economic development. Talk about that with some of the other communities around the nation, and particularly with IEDC and what you guys are prioritizing.
So, obviously it's baked into the strategic plan now. So it's a priority objective for us to really help economic developers from both in the United States, because we're still heavily US-centric, even though we're expanding our international strategy, but also across the globe, to figure out how developers can, when they generate growth, can make sure that that growth is distributed, because that's what we really have a problem. We don't have a problem with the size of our economy. The wealth gap isn't a function of the size of the economy, it's a function of the distribution of economic growth, and it has been pretty much since the 70s. So for us, it's about, sharing with economic developers across the nation why it's important to prioritize inclusive, or what we classify as equitable growth. So it's very difficult to have a long-run competitive economy if a large percentage of your population has zero to negative net worth and low income. You're always fighting upstream to have a growth-centric and a strong competitive economy. Large chunks of it, happen. And so we've been going back to even prior to Nathan coming on board. We launched a Racism and Economic Development Committee coming out of the pandemic to prioritize that, and a lot of equitable work that came out of that, like our Equitable Development Playbook. We're in the process of writing the second playbook, and we converted it into a course. Why is a course important? Because now you're starting to embed it into the practice in the field of economic development. Mm-hmm. And so when you look around the nation, I think obviously there's been some social and political headwinds against some of the concepts around traditional DEIA, but that's only part of what we're talking about. We're really talking about what almost every American would acknowledge, the fact that if we're working with a strong economy and a growth economy, and to be competitive, you need more accessibility to the opportunities that America should be providing to all of its citizens, regardless of race, gender, or location.
Sure, sure. And Tennessee is a very high rural area. And so talk a little bit about that from IEDC's focus as well, because to your point, we're not talking about necessarily race, but we're talking about social economics or socioeconomic prosperity for everyone.
That's a great question. And so now for rural developers, this is the perfect time to get engaged with IEDC. Like I mentioned, Nathan came from Rural Community Action Partnership, which started as a rural water-centric organization and morphed into a broader economic development organization. So he has a strong heart and a passion for rural. When I started at the Federal Reserve, before I came to IEDC, the first 5 years of my career there were spent talking about alternative and entrepreneurial strategies for rural communities. So both of us bring this very high level of sensitivity to what I call geographic bias in economic development, because most of our development systems and processes are actually designed for large urban centers or larger cities. They're not really designed for rural communities if you think about policy. In fact, I don't know when this is going to air, but I'm doing a webinar with somebody that actually focuses on teeny tiny towns. So we're talking about towns less than 500 people. And we're going to talk about how collaboration and leveraging, your neighbors can actually achieve economic growth. So we're really going to be pushing that. We're talking about rural conferences, more rural articles, more training specifically to rural communities. So it's when we talk about this concept of equitable development, again, most people look at it from a race or even a gender-centric perspective, but we take a bigger lens. We say, yes, that's important, but we're also talking about communities that have been left behind that are often in rural communities as well.
Sure, sure. So this morning we had the opportunity to meet with our mayor, our City of Memphis Mayor, Paul Young, as well as our County Mayor, Lee Harris, Collierville Mayor Stan Joyner, and others at a Joint Economic Development Council. And there we had all organizations representing economic development partners, our school system, utility company, state, and others. Talk a little bit, because you used the word collaboration. What does collaboration really mean under the umbrella of IEDC? And you kind of threw out some recommendations for our community to collaborate. What does that look like?
So it's one thing to say it. It's another thing to explain to folks what it means. Because usually when you say collaboration, it's, let's get around the room and figure out how to work together, usually in a transactional relationship. I can do this for you, you can do this for me. Oftentimes it's not really what can we do together and how we're going to organize in a way where we're all leveraging the things that we're the best at, and we're supporting people in the areas where they're the best at. So we usually don't get that far, but I'm even talking about deeper than that. Here's an example. We just did our small business visits. We were at Trap Fusion, and at Trap Fusion there was a young lady there that managed one of your largest homeless, shelters and care centers.
Right.
And that was an opportunity for you to go and to introduce yourself to her. And if you remember what I said, after you had that conversation, what I said, when I say collaboration, this is what I mean. I mean you bringing people in that are touching all different aspects of the economic development environment and bringing them around the table and starting to build consensus, collective strategies, a due north. That's a little bit different than the way it's been traditionally talked about. Because historically, economic developers wouldn't have said, let's pull the homeless, person that's touching the largest homeless, population in the room. But that's a critical population that needs a voice and has implications on economic development. We can keep going on with examples like that. I also mentioned in the session this morning, I was so glad to have, I believe her name was Patrice from Shelby Schools.
Patrice Thomas.
Yep. And I was intentional about saying to her, I'm so glad you're here, because so often in economic development conferences and economic development events, the schools are not present. And how can we make intelligent economic development strategy if the largest producer of our human capital is not even in the room weighing in?
Yeah.
So when we talk about collaboration, we're talking about creating a bigger tent. We're talking about leveraging skills, setting a table to identify a common agenda, and truly be willing to work together for the good of a whole versus this interagency communication competition that you often see in communities.
Well, Dr. Gines, both on our county side as well as our city side, now we have new elected officials, and those elected officials are talking about community-focused development and how we're involved in the community and how we're improving the quality of life. And then, of course, you met our new mayor, Paul Young, who is a planner by trade himself. And so we continue to talk about how we improve neighborhoods and how we actually touch people, but including them in that. So that word transactional, when you talk about our collaboration, we are looking for a deeper engagement. So with that, and let's talk about small businesses. You attended our small business incentive advisory council ad hoc meeting today. I was really impressed and thankful to my team because they were able to get businesses out, and businesses that I had not met myself before, but that were engaged and wanted to hear from our local partners. We had Starco, DMC, the City of Memphis, Epicenter, the Black Business Association, as well as our TSBDC. All those folks in one room talking about entrepreneurship and how we support businesses. You have a long history with that. That's actually how you and I connected back in the day when we were both doing that work primarily. Talk a little bit about your perspective from that, and then IEDC's prioritization of the entrepreneurial community.
Absolutely. So, both Nathan and myself have a high priority of entrepreneurship, because we feel like, especially for communities that are being left behind or have been significantly under-optimized, underdevelopment, or disinvested in, it's really the most direct pathway to in creating economic prosperity in those communities for a variety of reasons. One, SBA classification of small businesses generate about half the new jobs in the nation, but small growth-oriented businesses are actually producing around 64% of the net new jobs. Also, when you look at the wealth creation factor, if you're a Black or Latinx individual, you are 100 times more likely to be a millionaire if you're an entrepreneur than not. And so the capacity to create wealth, to create community-based optimism, to hire from within the community, generate jobs and employment, and overall contribute to the tax base and the overall perception of the community, it has to be entrepreneurship that's driving that priority. So in IEDC, I tell my staff, we hired a director of entrepreneurship, and she always throws the quote back at me. She said, Dell, you said entrepreneurship is the tip of the spear of economic development, which it is, because every big business that we see today once was a small business. Right. Just like no human just jumps out, able to run, jump, and play basketball. Business starts as a bigger business. It starts with an idea that is nurtured with a support structure and system that helps to manifest that idea into economic opportunity. Yeah. The same thing applies in our rural communities, the same thing applies in our disadvantaged urban core communities. But yet, unfortunately, this is one of the under-resourced areas of development. Yeah. It's like, we'll hear politicians say small businesses are the backbone of the economy, but unfortunately, the funds don't necessarily follow the statement. Sure. And so when we look at the fact that you can do an economic development incentive program for $100 million, which probably is likely 10 times the budget of all of those organizations that were in the room with us, then you have a rebalancing of the portfolio, the economic development portfolio, that likely needs to occur if in Memphis you want to empower and scale up the ability of that population to generate economic growth and optimism.
Yeah. Well, we have a real unprecedented interest, from my view, of large businesses being interested in the community. We have, like any community nationwide, we have crime, we have education system, poverty, we have potholes, we have it all. But in addressing that, our community is coming together with the business community. So the public side and our mayors and chambers are all really working together. And you touched on something when you said that every large business has been a small business before, because we have this global small company, you may have heard of them, called FedEx, that was once an idea in a college paper, and now it's a large, multi-billion-dollar company. We're here. How can we, from the public side and as economic developers, create a system where those large businesses and corporations working with the small businesses and the community and the policymakers, how can we better work together to create a better community for everyone?
Yeah, I believe a lot of it, in politics and community, there's a lot of noise. And a lot of noise, I feel like, distorts what a due north should be. There's a reason, when you look at our vision statement, that it's a vision statement. It says, as a core aspect, inclusive prosperity. That's a due north. A vision statement allows you to filter what decisions you should and should not make and the implications. So I would ask the question to the Memphis business political community and also the community itself. What is really your due north? Being anti-something is not a due north. So being anti-crime is not a due north. It's not a due north is an aspirational objective. So what is the aspirational objective of Memphis? Is it high quality prosperity for all people, the progressive improvement of quality of life regardless of where you live? And if that's your due north, then you got to reverse engineer backwards.
Sure.
Because if you look at Memphis or any community, I could use my community as well as an example, like what you see in terms of demographics, geographic challenges, all of those different things are the result of the system you have in place now and you have had in place. And so if you know that what the system you have had and you have in place is producing X type of results, then you can't keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. Yeah. And so I would say, what I would think would be really great for a community, which I think can really be on the cusp of rapid transformation, because the assets, folks like you and other organizations and communities really willing to get together, is to say, this is what we believe at the highest level. So you go vision, strategy, tactics. And if we believe that we want to have inclusive prosperity for everybody in Memphis, and we know that entrepreneurship is a primary driver of that, high quality of jobs, intelligent placemaking where people feel valued are all principles of that, then how do you organize your corporate community, your business community, your philanthropic and policymakers and economic developers and coalesce them around that shared vision? Because again, like I said this morning, many hands make the work light, but if many hands are all pulling in different directions, you ain't gonna go nowhere.
Yeah. Well, as we kind of wrap up, I want to just ask you from IEDC's perspective. Again, we connected many years ago. So grateful for you to accept the invitation to come here and to meet, our stakeholders and our mayors and small businesses. What do you think we here in Memphis and Shelby County can do to be more connected to work with IEDC, and what does that look like for the best practices?
I think there's a variety of ways to plug in. So obviously, becoming a member,
which we are,
which you are, and we're opening it up, so it's a bigger tent now.
Okay.
So like your ESOs, entrepreneurship support organizations, and others, we'll be finding more and more progressive value in becoming a member of IEDC. And it's important because the more, alternative developers, emergent developers that are in our membership, the more we're adequately representing the field. And if people are not present and don't have a voice, then it's very difficult for us to understand and know what they need and to develop strategies and training, et cetera. Also, participate in professional development around many different areas. Like I said, we're coming out with the equitable development courses, which I think is a great course for everybody to take, where we already have the entrepreneurship-led economic development courses that would be great for folks that are interested in that space. Attend the conferences. This is where you get to really immerse yourself with other people in the field and learn things from folks across the nation. And just hang out with us when you can on social media. We love to follow people and we love to talk on social media. All those different ways where we can kind of create, what we're trying to really create in IEDC now is a much more interactive, engaged, network, partnership-driven form of economic development. And we're getting there. Nathan's only been on board for about 2.5 years. I've only been there for 1. but we got tremendous momentum now, and it's a really great time for folks to jump on that train, because where we're going is going to change the world.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Dr. Dell Gines, we are so happy that for your first visit to Memphis, you visited EDGE. And so we always end our podcast with a kind of, lightning round of questions. And so I'm going to give this to you because I think I may know some of your answers. But you ready? You got to think quick on your feet and just give an answer. You ready?
Sure.
Okay. Oh, here we go. Kansas City barbecue or Memphis barbecue?
I'm gonna say I really like the smoked legs that I had at the pig place on Beale Street.
Okay.
And then just what I saw at Trap House Fusion, I don't know if he classifies as barbecue, but I'm coming back here for that. So I'm gonna give the nod to Memphis, even though I love Jack Staten barbecue.
Okay, good deal. Football or basketball?
Basketball.
Okay.
I'm still kneeling for Kaepernick.
Okay. And then we're going to end with, do you have dessert first or dessert last?
Can I have them both?
Of course you can.
I have to make that choice?
Of course you can. When you're an adult, you can do that.
Yeah, but here's what as I got older, I choose to eat more meat over sweet. So.
Okay, good deal. Well, Dr. Gines, thank you again for being here with us. And thank you to our viewers for joining us at the headquarters of the Economic Development Podcast powered by EDGE. Until next time.
We hope you've been inspired and informed about the incredible economic development activities happening here in Memphis and Shelby County. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. And be sure to connect with EDGE on social media to stay up to date on all the latest developments. Together, we can build a brighter future for our community. Let's keep powering progress through partnerships in Memphis and Shelby County.